Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Dougal. I'm a parental return to work coach, and I'm here today with Ginny Radmall, who is a former coachee of mine, and she's very nicely agreed to speak with me today about her experience of what that was like. Ginny, would you just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Ginny. I run a company called the Ivy Way, and I work half in the startup world, coaching founders how to pitch in front of various different audiences, and then half in the corporate space doing presentation coaching, which I absolutely love. And I recently, or 15 months ago, became a mum and have a little boy. So life has changed a bit in the last year or so.
Yes, and that's obviously how we have come to know each other as well. Can you tell us a bit about what was happening in your life before we met and how sort of what led you, I suppose, to think about having coaching through that time of your life?
Yeah. So in the lead up to my due date, I had this growing fear really of what was going to happen to my business. What was I going to do in terms of work and looking after my baby? And I really wanted some help to work out what was the new playbook and what did the new normal look like when everything was about to be thrown up in the air. And I had heard a bit about you, Laura, from some other coaches that we were connected to, and just caught a bit of what you were doing through LinkedIn as well, and just thought, I really need this. I really need an external voice and some space to process and try and work through what I want this next season to look like, because I really didn't have any idea what was about to happen and what I needed to do to sort of put some things in place to make myself feel prepared for what was to come.
Oh my word, I have just remembered that there's a line that you shared, and I often think of it where you said something like, before you have a child, it's just a concept. And then, and I think of that all the time, and I often will say it with other people because what you've just said there, it's like this fear, isn't it, of the unknown and not knowing. And it is just a concept in our minds until it actually happens.
Yeah.
And then what? And I guess because we met before you
Mhm.
had Micah, and what would you recommend that to other people? Do you think it was worthwhile having those sessions before
Mhm.
actually having the baby? What was your experience?
For me, definitely, because the fear was really hard. The fear was really hard to put into words because there were lots of different facets to it. And I wanted to like plan ahead as well as to what the first season of my maternity leave, and my leave was sort of in inverted brackets because I was running my own business, and so it was always going to be quite fluid. But I really wanted to be able to have some sense of, yeah, being able to plan, probably being able to control things a little bit, which is always quite hard with a young baby in tow. But it enabled me to go into that first part of the season with just a little bit of like feeling slightly more grounded than I otherwise would have. It felt like I think the main fear on my side was I feel like I'm having to write the rules of this. And the parameters felt so wide that that was really intimidating. There were so many different options of how I could keep on operating and running my business, or what I could do with my time as a mum. It just felt totally overwhelming. And so, yeah, I 100% would recommend having some of that coaching begin before that season starts. And it's really interesting thinking back to that genesis of the few months before, the early days of having Micah, and now a year on, and how our conversations have developed across that time as well.
Mm, yeah, that's so interesting to hear. What do you think those coaching sessions like enabled for you or gave you?
I think the main thing always felt like space and clarity, which sounds generic, but there was my experience of being a first time mum, especially in the first few months, was my brain was just so full, and also felt so. I experienced a lot of brain fog as well, and so trying to think really clearly and cut through a lot of the noise that was in my head and external noise felt really hard. So having this space to jump on a call with you and for some of what I was saying to be reflected back and to therefore gain a bit of clarity about what I was actually thinking but wasn't able to sometimes articulate or like really kind of have the clarity on was so helpful. and then being able to come up with some tools to tackle certain problems was also really useful. So it often felt very kind of like I was breathing in our sessions, which was always good, but also that I'd come out with something.
Kind of a minimum requirement, yeah.
Like breathing psychologically, right? Like breathing emotionally, psychologically, rather than like, I think sometimes even outside of being a parent, when you're running your own business, you kind of feel like you're sort of holding your breath sometimes, and you're just going from one thing to the next, and you don't always take that time to like stop and breathe and think. So it was invaluable having the space, but also having those tools, like really practical tools that we would work together to create, which meant I could do something about whatever I'd been grappling with, was so helpful. I was like, oh, I can actually move forward on this thing rather than like something's come to the surface, but I'm stuck with what I need to do to move forward or solve that. So that was very, very valuable.
That was so, as you're saying that, I'm remembering like that's definitely how I would describe my experience of you, actually, of doing that sort of deep thinking and then always leaving with a very solid, and
Mm,
that looks like this. And like you say,
yeah,
you built tools as we were going along to
mm,
help support that in between sessions as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think that's for me, that's one of the best things about coaching as well, is that you're able to move the dial a bit and you're able to navigate through something, because it's really useful for something to be brought to the surface. But if you sort of remain in that place, or if you don't, yeah, if you're not quite sure how to move forward, then you sort of stay where you are. And I'm somebody who also needs that like that oomph and somebody to talk with, and the accountability of coaching as well is, I think, just so key in navigating through something, because you say you're going to do something in one session, and then when you're next going to meet, that you would like to be able to say, I've done that thing, I've actioned that planning tool, or I've been able to like get in touch with that client. So I always found that helpful, like the journey of coaching, rather than it being a one-off conversation, which is maybe useful to a certain degree, but doesn't have that continuity of support and somebody like tracking with you, which is one of the great powers of coaching.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And as somebody who is a coach, yourself, and you've obviously experienced coaching in other areas as well, why do you think coaching was so important at this stage of like becoming a parent, of bringing work back in? Like what made you think that coaching was the solution, I guess, that you were looking for at that stage?
Um, I think there were so many unknowns, and I think that like coaching helps you find the answer that you kind of have inside of you already, but is probably maybe quite deeply buried, or you haven't been able to like formulate it in a certain way. And so I feel like coaching is the most, in this instance, especially as a new parent, like one of the most empowering methods of helping you like navigate this journey, because there's a lot that I think my confidence definitely felt a little bit knocked when I first came out the other side of being a new mum. And I did pause my work for a couple of months. And so there was this fear of, what will happen to my business? What will happen to relationships with clients? And coaching, when it's at its best, which with Laura it is, it enables you to rebuild some of that confidence, because it reminds you that you actually have a lot of the tools inside of you. There's a lot, when you are able to talk something through with somebody, you've got like you have more knowledge than you think, sometimes more like wisdom and insight, but it takes that conversation to draw it to the surface. And I think if I knew something different, like I'd been on a taught course instead, or something like that, then I would maybe have had the information, but not been able to apply it so directly to my specific circumstance. And that was what was really important. I thought, my husband was taking 6 months of paternity leave off. So we were working out how does that fit into what I'm then doing with my business. And it felt unique. It might not have been a totally unique situation, but it felt unique. And so I wanted that unique approach, which coaching just does, because it's a one-on-one, and you're able to get to the root of what the challenge is for you, which I loved.
Oh, thank you for being so complimentary. That's very nice to hear. But also, thank you for like putting into words something that I find so difficult to express. And that phrase of like, you have the answers inside yourself, you know, like it's almost a bit icky sometimes, isn't it, saying that? But I think you've
Yeah.
expressed that so, because there is a bit of a feeling, I think, about with coaching, it's kind of like, well, I've got all the answers. What do I need a coach? You know, and it is,
Mm,
I do think
mm,
it's one of those things, but I think you've expressed it so beautifully there of coaching is intended to create a space so that
mm,
you can think clearly, so that you can get really clear on what's
mm.
important to you. That's the whole in any situation. But I do think,
Yeah.
as you're saying, you know, becoming a parent and working or running your own business, like
Mm,
what's important to you
mm.
is the most important thing. And it is unique to everybody in my experience.
Yeah, definitely. And we've spoken a bit about this of how you think fundamentally changes. Like your brain has a rewire that it was very hard to have like again, it was like a kind of concept that I had read about in books, but wouldn't have been able to understand necessarily what that would have looked like until I experienced it. And like all of my priorities just suddenly shifted, and everything, there was like a kind of focus that came with that, and then also like a panic that came with that as well. And so some of my previous ways of thinking before having a kid were just really different, and some of the things my kind of, I guess, fallbacks just didn't really work anymore. It was like I needed actually a new toolkit. I needed some other ways of thinking to match how my brain was basically being rewired. And that was, yeah, I think I know I'm in a different place just in how I think about things now than I would have been without having had some coaching. I think I would probably maybe just be have remained. I think what I was feeling was just like indecision with the kind of confusion of things and like not really knowing what to do. There was definitely some room for indecision to come through, and coaching has enabled me to probably be a bit more laser focused about like, this is what I want to do with my business, and this is what isn't as important anymore, or will take a backseat to something else, or to being able to spend my evenings with my son rather than like working endless hours on my business. It just everything flipped really quickly in a way that I had thought about but hadn't anticipated to that degree.
Because it's just a concept
It's
until you're actually living it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
completely. What would you say to someone then who was maybe at a similar point to where you were, who before they've had their child, but they're considering like, well, maybe I'll need some support. What would you be saying to that person?
Mm. I mean, to just go ahead, just do it, just to have some. I think it is that question of like the what's at stake piece of where do you think that coaching might be able to get you to in the next couple of months if you have it before you have your baby? Like, what do you think it might be able to do for you versus if you don't have that, what alternative place might you be in? And not as a fear-mongering thing, but as as a way of seeing just the value that coaching will hopefully bring. That was the question I asked myself actually, was I could actually stall this and use the coaching sessions further down the line. But for me, there was a real urgency. I know there's a classic thing. I experienced this like when you're about to have your baby and you suddenly decide you should clean all the skirting boards in your house, which I did.
Very important.
Yeah, you're like, the baby will notice if my skirting boards aren't clean. And so it felt for me like one of those, it's very different having coaching from cleaning the skirting boards, but I wanted to get certain things in line. I wanted to, while I had a bit more headspace, because I did have more headspace before having my baby, I wanted to be able to figure some things out and work with you, Laura, to like understand what I wanted better as somebody running a business, and how I could continue to grow that business even after having my baby. So for me, it was really important. It was like getting those ducks in a line. Ducks in a line? That's the phrase, right?
In a row, yeah.
Ducks in a row. Getting the ducks in a row. And yeah, and just feeling more prepared for the season ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience as well. Is there anything else that you think needs to be said or before
Mm,
we end this conversation?
I'm sure there is. Let me have a think. um, I think my experience of of coaching, if I was to like to look back to, I'm trying to think for some of like the other fundamental things that have shifted. And I think it is maybe it's just sort of to reiterate is that like clarity of thought that feels like it's has come through. And the great thing about coaching is that once you learn a couple of like tools through coaching, whether it's like a certain way of thinking or you've come out from a session with a certain, yeah, a tool or skill of something that you can do to navigate around a challenge, you can repeat that as well, even outside of coaching. And I think that's one of the powers as well, is powers of coaching is um, outside of the sessions, it leaves you with this invaluable toolkit of things that you can then use in a whole sphere of other like instances and like within challenges within your business or challenges like in like personal relationships as well. I think it's just the potential is feels quite endless in a really like amazing way. So I'm just really grateful that I've been able to work with you and to have these moments of clarity, these really brilliant tools, and in a like one of the most pivotal points of my life, just had that space to think and to have been listened to so well and reflected back to me some of the things that I'm feeling and thinking, but haven't necessarily been able to even hear myself saying because there's so much that's going on. So I'm very grateful to have worked with you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Ah, well, I feel exactly the same. I feel very grateful to have met you, and I love the way that you think about coaching as well. I think we're very aligned, aren't we? And I feel like we are in the way that we approach coaching as
Yeah.
well. I could talk about it all day. And I'm also, as we're talking, just thinking that obviously this video will be available on my website and on YouTube. And I'd like to put your details on
Mm,
there of your business, because
yeah.
just thinking that the work that Ginny does is around confidence in speaking,
Mm,
and knowing that confidence is one of the areas that can take a hit when we have children. So I'm just wondering if there might be some crossover there. So if I put your details, and if anyone's interested, they can look Ginny up and see what she does and be in touch with her if there's something to explore there as well.
yes, please. I'd love that. Thanks,
Yeah.
Laura.
Thank you so much, Ginny. We'll speak soon.